Beamy Cheryl, 26 years old, working on my PhD in sociology. My life for the past few years has been a cycle of research grants, academic papers, and overpriced coffee. I live and breathe this stuff. My chosen field is gender studies, specifically modern social dynamics between men and women. My dissertation was supposed to be my magnum opus, the thing that would put me on the map. The topic came to me sometime last spring during a conversation with a friend. Let's call her Jessica. Jessica was complaining endlessly about her boyfriend, not about cheating or anything dramatic, but about the gym. He was spending more and more time there, 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. She'd say things like, "It's like he's avoiding me," and "He cares more about his deadlift than our relationship." She was a successful, independent woman, a lawyer, sharp as a tack, opinionated, and it clicked in my head, connecting to all the theories I'd been studying. The rise of the strong, self-sufficient woman was creating a crisis in modern masculinity. Men, no longer the sole providers or protectors, were feeling obsolete, intimidated. So, where do they run? To places where they can reclaim a sense of primitive, physical dominance. The gym. It's a controlled environment where they can build literal armor, a muscular shell against a world that no longer lionizes their traditional roles. My hypothesis was born. The modern man's obsession with fitness is a direct flight response to the rise of female empowerment. They aren't building bodies to attract women. They're building fortresses because they're afraid of them. I pitched it to my advisor, a tenured professor who had built her career on similar deconstructions of gender roles. She loved it, called it incisive and timely. My dissertation was officially titled Sanctuary of Fragility, the Modern Gymnasium as a Male Escapist Response to Matriarchal Ascendancy. Sounds impressive, right? I thought so too. The first step was to gather qualitative data. I needed to go into the lion's den. I needed to conduct a series of what I called provocational interviews to get the subjects to reveal their insecurities. My plan was to go to a gym, not a fancy sanitized fitness club, but a real old-school place with lots of free weights and the sound of clanging iron. The kind of place you see in movies. I spent a week preparing. I dusted off some old athletic clothes from my undergraduate days. They were ill-fitting and made me feel like an imposter. I drafted a list of questions, designed to be slightly leading, to gently poke the bear. Are you here to feel more powerful in your daily life? Do you find that physical strength helps you feel more confident when approaching women? And my personal favorite, the direct approach. Is the effort you put in here primarily about making yourself more attractive to potential partners? I had a small digital voice recorder and a notepad. I felt like a real field researcher, an anthropologist about to study a lost tribe. I found the perfect place after some online searching. It had terrible reviews from casual gym-goers, complaining about the loud music and intimidating atmosphere. Perfect. It must have been a Wednesday afternoon when I finally went. I figured it would be less crowded. I was wrong. The moment I walked in, it was a sensory overload. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, rubber, and that weird metallic tang of iron. The sound was a constant low-frequency roar of weights hitting the floor, punctuated by grunts and the rhythmic hiss of machines. I felt completely out of place, a scholar in a gladiator pit. I paid for a day pass, the guy at the counter barely glancing at me. He just took my money and pointed toward the locker rooms. After stashing my bag, I walked out onto the gym floor. My confidence wavered for a second. The place was huge. Racks of dumbbells lined one wall, looking like medieval weaponry. Squat racks and bench presses filled the center. In the corner, a group of enormous men were taking turns lifting what looked like actual boulders. I saw it all through the lens of my hypothesis. The grunting wasn't just exertion. It was a primal display of masculinity. The mirrors covering every wall weren't for checking form, they were for narcissistic self-affirmation. The quiet nods between lifters weren't just mutual respect, it was the silent communication of a threatened brotherhood. I took a deep breath, clutched my notepad, and decided to find my first subject. I identified him quickly. He was perfect. Let's call him the focused heavyweight. This guy was built like a refrigerator. He was setting up for a heavy bench press, his whole demeanor radiating intense concentration. He had huge headphones on, completely sealing him off from the world. He was the epitome of my theory. A man creating his own isolated reality where he could be king. I waited patiently. I knew not to interrupt someone mid-lift. I'd read that much about gym etiquette. He did his set. 5 reps with a weight that made the bar bend. The effort was immense, his face turning red. He slammed the bar back onto the rack with a final guttural yell. This was my chance. I approached him as he sat up, breathing heavily. I gave him what I hoped was a friendly, disarming smile. "Excuse me," I said, a little louder than I intended. He didn't hear me. I tapped him lightly on the shoulder. He flinched, startled, and pulled one side of his headphones off. His eyes were completely blank, as if I'd just woken him from a deep sleep. "Hi," I started, trying to sound casual. "I'm a sociology student. I was just wondering, are you training so hard to become more attractive to women?" The words hung in the air between us. He just stared at me. It wasn't anger or annoyance. It was pure, unadulterated confusion. His brow furrowed, as if my question was in a different language that he vaguely recognized but couldn't parse. He looked from my face to the barbell, then back to my face. "What?" he said. It wasn't a question demanding clarification. It was a single, monosyllabic expression of utter bewilderment. Before I could repeat myself or try to explain, he just shook his head slightly, put his headphone back on, and lay back down on the bench to prepare for his next set. I was dismissed. Not even rejected, just dismissed, as if I was a fly buzzing around his head. My academic confidence took a hit. That wasn't the reaction I had predicted. I expected defensiveness, maybe a boastful, "Yeah, of course." Nothing. Okay, I thought. Wrong approach, too direct. Maybe he was just too deep in the zone. I needed a different type of subject. I scanned the gym again, and my eyes landed on the cardio section. A guy was on a treadmill, running at a steady, determined pace. Let's call him the cardio runner. He was leaner, more of an athletic build. He seemed more approachable. He wasn't wearing headphones, just focused on the screen in front of him. I walked over, standing a respectful distance away from the moving belt. I waited for a moment, then tried again. "Hi there," I said, projecting my voice over the whir of the machine. He glanced over, a little annoyed at the interruption. "I'm doing some research," I continued, "and I'm curious about people's motivations. Would you say a big reason you're here is to improve your chances in the dating world?" This time, I got a reaction. A slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was pure, dripping sarcasm. He looked at me, then at the digital display on his machine, then back at me. "Oh, absolutely," he said, his voice laced with irony. "The ladies can't resist a man who can run in place for 45 minutes. It works every time." He then reached forward, pressed a button on the console, and the treadmill sped up. He broke into a full sprint, his eyes locked forward, a clear and unspoken message that our conversation was over. I stood there for a moment, feeling foolish. 2 attempts, 2 complete failures. My provocational questions weren't provoking anything but confusion and mockery. My frustration was growing. Were they just being deliberately obtuse? Were their defenses so high that they couldn't even engage with a simple question? My entire hypothesis felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Dejected, I found an empty bench near a water fountain, away from the main action. I sat down, opened my notepad, and realized I hadn't written a single word. My plan was a disaster. I couldn't just walk up to people and ask these questions. It wasn't working. I decided to change tactics. No more interviews for now. I would just observe. I put my notepad away and just watched. For maybe 20 or 30 minutes, I just sat there and let the gym's ecosystem unfold around me. I started to notice things I'd missed during my initial biased survey. I expected to see preening and competition, guys trying to outlift each other, flexing in the mirrors to intimidate rivals. But I didn't see much of that. I saw a young, skinny kid struggling to set up for a squat. One of the huge guys I'd seen earlier walked over. I braced myself for some kind of hazing or mockery. Instead, the big guy spoke quietly to the kid for a moment, adjusted his form, and then stood behind him to spot him, offering words of encouragement on each rep. Over at the dumbbell rack, two guys were working out near each other. They didn't speak a word, but when one finished with a pair of weights, he silently offered them to the other, who gave a quick nod of thanks. It was a simple, efficient, non-verbal exchange. I watched a man meticulously wipe down his machine after using it, not just a quick swipe, but a thorough cleaning. It wasn't for show. No one was even watching him. It was just a matter of principle. The atmosphere I had initially interpreted as hostile and competitive now seemed different. It was focused, disciplined, almost monastic. Everyone was there for their own purpose, engaged in their own personal struggle against the weight, against the machine, against themselves. They were in the same room, but each was on their own island of effort. My neatly constructed theory about male posturing and insecurity was starting to develop serious cracks. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't notice the guy who sat down on the other end of my bench until he started unwrapping the tape from his hands. This was Stephen. I hadn't noticed him before. He wasn't the biggest guy in the gym, nor the loudest. He probably in his late 20s or early 30s. He looked tired, the way people do after a long day at work, not the energized exhaustion of a workout. He was methodical. He finished his workout, carefully re-racked his weights, and now he was just sitting, catching his breath, methodically undoing his wrist wraps. There was no performance in his actions. He wasn't looking around for anyone to notice him. I decided to try one last time, but this time I would throw my script out the window. No more leading questions, no more provocation, just a simple, honest question. I waited until he finished with his wraps and took a long drink from his water bottle. "Excuse me," I said, my voice much quieter this time. He looked up, and his expression was neutral, not annoyed, not confused, just open. "I'm a researcher," I began, deciding to be upfront, "and I'm genuinely trying to understand this place. I've been watching, and I feel like I'm missing something fundamental. What is it that brings everyone here, day after day?" I expected a simple answer: to get stronger, for my health, to look good. Stephen looked at me for a long moment, then glanced around the gym, as if seeing it for the first time. He seemed to be formulating a real answer, not just a platitude. He let out a slow breath. "It's simple," he said, his voice calm and a little weary. "It's honest." I must have looked confused, because he decided to elaborate. That's when everything I thought I knew started to fall apart. I just stared at him, waiting. Honest? The word felt foreign in this context. Stephen nodded, then gestured with his water bottle towards the squat rack where the focused heavyweight from before was now loading on more plates. "See that bar over there?" he asked. "Let's say it weighs 100 kilograms. I nodded, following his gaze. "That bar weighs 100 kilograms today. It will weigh 100 kilograms tomorrow. It will weigh 100 kilograms a year from now. It doesn't have moods. It doesn't have a hidden agenda." He paused, letting that sink in. My academic brain was trying to categorize his words, to fit them into a pre-existing framework, but I was failing. That bar, he continued, his voice steady and even, will never tell me it has a headache. It will never get upset because I looked at it the wrong way. It won't play games. Its expectations are perfectly clear. A crack appeared in the foundation of my dissertation. If I put in the work, if I train hard enough and smart enough, I will be able to lift it. If I don't, I won't. The outcome is a direct, unfiltered result of my own effort. There's no ambiguity. It's completely, brutally honest. I was speechless. My carefully crafted questions about female attraction and insecurity seemed so childishly simplistic now. Stephen wasn't finished. He pointed over to the row of treadmills where the sarcastic cardio runner was now in his cool-down walk. "Look at that," he said. "See the screen? It shows speed, distance, time, calories burned. They're just numbers. They don't lie. They don't flatter you to make you feel better, and they don't criticize you to put you down." He turned his gaze back to me, and for the first time, I saw the profound weariness in his eyes. It wasn't physical exhaustion from the workout. It was something deeper. "Out there," he said, gesturing vaguely towards the door, towards the rest of the world, "everything is complicated. The rules are constantly changing. What was acceptable yesterday is a fireable offense today. What's seen as a compliment by one person is an insult to another." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping a little, as if sharing a secret. "You spend so much energy trying to navigate a world of subtext, of hints, of things left unsaid. You're constantly trying to decode what people really mean, what they really want. You have to manage their emotions, anticipate their reactions. It's a minefield." I thought about my own social circles, the academic debates, the endless deconstruction of every word and motive. He was right. It was exhausting. "But in here," he said, his gaze sweeping across the gym again, "none of that exists. The rules are the laws of physics. The challenge is tangible. It's right there in front of you. The feedback is immediate. The bar either goes up or it doesn't. You either run the mile or you don't." He started to wrap his hand wraps into a neat roll, a final, methodical action. "This isn't an escape from women," he said, directly addressing the core of my unasked question. "It's an escape from chaos. It's a sanctuary of clarity. Here, for 1 hour a day, things make sense. The relationship between action and result is pure." He finished rolling the wraps and stood up, tucking them into his gym bag. "We don't come here because we're afraid of strong women," he concluded, looking me straight in the eye. "We come here because we're tired of playing a game where we don't know the rules, and the goalposts are always moving. Here, the goalposts are bolted to the floor." He gave me a short, polite nod. "Have a good day," he said, and then he walked away towards the locker room, leaving me alone on the bench. I sat there for a long, long time. I didn't move. I just watched and listened. The clang of weights was no longer the sound of aggression. It was the sound of certainty. A weight dropped is a weight dropped. A weight lifted is a weight lifted. A fact. I looked at the men training. I saw their faces contorted with effort. I had mistaken it for anger or rage, but it wasn't. It was focus. It was the face of a person engaged in a task with an absolute binary outcome, success or failure. No in-between. The big guy helping the skinny kid wasn't asserting dominance. He was passing on the rules of this clear, understandable world. Keep your back straight, breathe here, push through your heels. These weren't suggestions. They were instructions for success within a system that rewards correct application of technique and effort. My whole academic framework, my entire dissertation, collapsed into dust. I had seen these men as running away from something, but Stephen had shown me they were running towards something. They weren't seeking physical dominance over others. They were seeking personal mastery over themselves, in an environment that made such mastery possible and measurable. My hypothesis was that they feared the complexity of the modern, empowered woman. But that wasn't it. They were exhausted by the complexity of the modern world in general, a world of nuance, gray areas, and emotional guesswork. The dating world was just the most acute, high-stakes version of that chaos. I thought about what it takes to ask a woman out today. The risk of rejection isn't just a simple no. It can be a public shaming, a misinterpretation of intent, an accusation of being creepy. A successful date doesn't guarantee a second one. A good relationship can end for reasons that are never fully explained. The rules are a labyrinth of unspoken expectations, past traumas, and shifting social scripts. It's a lottery, an emotional lottery with a high buy-in and no guarantee of a payout. The investment of time, emotion, and vulnerability might lead to happiness, or it might lead to absolute devastation. There's no way to know. Then I looked at the squat rack. The investment there was physical effort. The risk was temporary muscle failure. The reward was a quantifiable increase in strength, a guaranteed return on investment. It was so clear to me now. These men weren't choosing iron over women. They were choosing certainty over uncertainty. They were choosing logic over ambiguity. They were choosing fairness over fortune. They were choosing a world where the effort you put in is directly proportional to the results you get out. They were choosing justice. I finally stood up from the bench. My notepad and voice recorder felt heavy and useless in my hands. The evidence I came to collect was worthless because the crime I was investigating didn't exist. I walked out of the gym, the noise and the smell fading behind me. The world outside seemed different. The traffic, the conversations of people passing by, the advertisements on billboards, it all seemed like a chaotic, noisy mess of competing signals and hidden meanings. For the first time, I understood the appeal of a place where a kilogram is just a kilogram. I went straight back to my apartment. I didn't stop for coffee. I didn't check my email. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed with the title page of my dissertation, Sanctuary of Fragility, the Modern Gymnasium as a Male Escapist Response to Matriarchal Ascendancy. I read the words over and over. They looked alien, pompous, arrogant, and utterly, fundamentally wrong. It was a title written by someone who stood outside a window, describing the furniture in a room they had never entered. My finger hovered over the keyboard. With a single quiet click, I highlighted the entire title. Then I hit the backspace key. The words vanished, one by one, until the page was completely blank. All that was left was a single blinking cursor at the top of an empty document, a blank slate. It was time to start over.